Hello and welcome everyone to another Virtual Excel Academy. My name is Jeff Schwartz and I will be here today. Leanne had another appointment today, but she will be returning to us tomorrow. Today's topic is going to be home improvements, learn basic tools and tricks for repairs around the house. Our instructor today is going to be Todd Clark, who is returning from, I think you were here about a month ago, Todd?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
I want to say welcome to everyone. We'll let people are still trickling in. All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen over to you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back. It's good to see that everybody's here. Hey Donnie, hey Nadia. Hi guys, how's it going? It's good to see you again. So this is a follow-up on the basic tools that we did probably about a month ago. And so today we're going to talk about home repair. So today the learning objectives, we're going to identify 3 basic home repairs and the tools, if they're necessary, to make those repairs. And we'll also identify some proper safety procedures and precautions that you're going to need to consider while doing these things. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, plunging a toilet. Can anybody tell me if they've plunged a toilet before? This is something that a lot of people get nervous about. And so we want to discuss it because the last thing you want to do is start watching a toilet start to overflow and you get nervous. So Monica says her brother has, Donnie hasn't. So we're going to go over the steps and procedures. But let's start out with the first question is, why would you plunge a toilet? Why would you want to plunge a toilet? Mike says he makes his dad do it. Yeah, I mean, we actually make our children do it if they do it. And I think I shared in the last time we were together that we actually made up a song for our daughter because it's been a continual thing with her. So we call her Plungy. But yes, Nadia says because the water's stuck. Basically, that's what's happening. The toilet is clogged and it won't flush. So here's a follow-up question. How do you know that your toilet is clogged? Like what sounds or sights do you see that would tell you that your toilet is clogged and needs to be plunged? Any ideas? Yes, Mike says that the water goes everywhere. That is true. As the water starts to fill up in the toilet bowl, you know that the toilet is clogged. Well, hopefully we don't get to that point. Donnie says, yeah, it doesn't flush. Nadia says it doesn't flush and it sounds different. Monica says nothing leaves the toilet. That's correct. Excellent. Yeah, so I have here, so the sounds, the bowl fills up, and we have here visuals, which we won't really get into, but yeah, you will definitely see the toilet is starting to clog. So what do we do? First thing is we don't want to panic, because once you start to watch that bowl fill up, everybody starts to panic. So that's the first thing, is you don't want to panic, because there is a way to resolve it and take care of it. And so we're going to go over those steps. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a better idea of what we need to do as far as plunging a toilet goes. Okay, so plunging a toilet basics. What is a plunger? Does anybody know what a plunger is, or even what it looks like, or if you've used one before? Why don't you tell me what you think a plunger is, or if you've even used it before. Donnie says a long stick. That is correct. It does have a long stick on it. Good job. On that long stick, what's on the end of the long stick? Monica says a plunger is a medium-sized thing at the end. Yes. Mike says there's a giant suction cup. Yes, great. So, so a plunger, as you can see, I have a picture of a plunger here on the right. And so I'm going to use my cursor to see if I can point to these different areas of the plunger. So it has a long, smooth part of the plunger, which I'm running the cursor along. That is the grip or the handle. It's usually made out of wood, but the newer ones are made out of plastic. And then at the end of the plunger, there is a rubber dome at the end, and this is called the cup. So you kind of like, so the cup, and then at the very bottom, go back. Sorry, guys. We have a flange. So it has this little lip down here. So the flange is actually going to go into the hole or the drain of the toilet. And that's what's going to basically be causing the suction. That's what's going to cause all the suction, which is going to help clear out the toilet. Here's a better picture of what we're talking about. So these are the parts of the plunger. So we have a long wooden handle, and that is what you're going to grip when you grab onto the plunger. Then at the end, we have the cup right here. That's going to fit over the drain. And then this is hard to see, but there is usually a little lip or a flange that's going to fit nice and snug into the drain of the toilet. Can anybody tell me if they've ever used one before? I've seen people tell me what a plunger is, but has anybody ever used a plunger before? Has anybody done this before? Donnie says, nope. Good thing, Donnie. Hopefully you won't ever have to use a plunger, but. Okay, so we're going to go on to how to use a plunger. So Nadia says you have only used it once. That's great. I'm glad you've only used it once. So like I said, our daughter is a habitual clogger. So we call her Plungy. So first step, you're going to place the cup of the plunger over the drain, and you're going to create a tight seal using the firm pressure. You're going to push and pull vertically. So vertically means up and down. So once you get that tight seal, you're going to push and pull. Now you don't want to push it too hard. Why do you think you wouldn't want to do this too quickly or be crazy with the plunger in the toilet? Anybody have an idea why you wouldn't want to go too crazy and you want to do it nice and slow so you make sure you have a tight seal? Yes, Nadia said so it doesn't splash. Absolutely. You don't want all that dirty water or whatever's in that toilet. You don't want it all over your bathroom floor. So the next step is you're going to feel that suction pressure if you're using it correctly. And it's also going to make kind of like a slushing or a slurping sound if you have the correct angle and you have the right pressure. So Monica says it might not work if you use it too fast. That's true too. Good job, Monica. If you use it too fast, or if you're not using it correctly, you won't have the right suction, and you won't get that right sound. It will almost sound like a slurping sound. So here are some important things that you want to know while you're using the plunger. You might need to turn the water off, because if your toilet keeps running, so let me just stop for a second. So your toilet, you go to the bathroom and you flush the toilet. It's not working. Some people will flush the toilet again, and that might actually clear it up. Sometimes with our toilet, you have to flush it or you have to hold the handle down a little bit longer. So you flush it a second time, nothing's really happening, and you're like, okay, let's try another time. So you flush it again, but now the water is starting to fill up. Now we're getting a little nervous because now all the bowl's starting to fill up and everything's getting off. It's starting to fill up to the top of the bowl. So now we want to make sure that we turn the water off. Now we're going to talk about turning the water off in the next few slides, but this is one thing that we want to know, is that you might need to actually turn the water off because the toilet's going to keep running and filling the bowl with water. So that's one thing that we want to note first. Donnie says to take the lid off and back it out. Yeah, so the lid and the toilet seat, you're going to want to lift those up, and you're going to want to back off if it starts to fill up. Here's the second thing we want to know. You might actually need to use a disposable cup to pull some of that water out. And I use the word disposable because you probably aren't going to want to use that cup again. Could be a plastic cup, just anything that as that bowl starts to fill up, you might actually need to scoop out some of that water and then go dump it down another drain or take it outside. And another thing to know, if the water is too low, so say you flushed it and now the water level isn't low enough, you might actually have to add a little bit of water to it. So you could take like a pitcher, like a plastic pitcher or another cup, and start adding water into the bowl. And here you want to add it, if there's not enough water in the bowl, you want to bring it up to at least halfway up the bowl, because that also helps with the suction. So you want some water in there when you're using the plunger to create suction, because and I won't really get into the mechanics of a toilet, but it's a drain basically. So you want to have enough water in there to help drain whatever's in the bowl out. Monica asked, how do you know if it's too high or too low? Good question, Monica. So if you look into the bowl and the water level is lower than what we would so if you're using the toilet regularly and you look in there, and some water levels are lower than others, but if you look in there and you notice that there's barely enough water in there to fill up that bottom drain, you're going to want to add water to it. And if you add the plunger, here's a good rule of thumb that I like to use. If you add the plunger, you're going to want to add enough water to at least cover the cup of the plunger. You don't want to add too much, because again, you don't want the water sloshing out of the bowl, but you want to add enough to create suction, which is basically what we're doing. We're sucking it like a straw, but you want it going out the other end rather than up. So how do you, so Donnie says, how do you get the toilet to stop continuously flushing? So one, as we mentioned earlier, you can turn the water off, but behind the toilet, Donnie, you have a tank. And if you lift the lid of that tank, you're going to see a few parts in there. And there's a rubber flapper that actually, so behind the toilet, and I don't want to go too off on crazy toilet talk here, but behind the toilet is a tank. And that tank is a reservoir. So when you push the plunger down, or not the plunger, but when you push the lever down to flush the toilet, the water in that bowl or that tank starts to then fill up the bowl and push everything out. So if it keeps running, if you lift that lid up and you look behind and into that bowl, you'll see a little rubber stopper. And so if the flapper, I don't know if you guys can see this, but with my hand, if the flapper isn't, there's a chain that holds it, and sometimes the chain gets caught. And so you can kind of maneuver your hand in there and let it so that the flap closes down and doesn't allow any more water to flow in there. But that's a great question, because even our children asked, Dad, our toilet's not working properly, it keeps running. So if you take the lid off the back, and if it's something that continually happens, you might actually have to adjust the chain, or there could be some kind of like a plastic rope, and you might actually have to adjust that to make it so that your toilet isn't continually flushing. That's a great question. Yeah, so Donnie says it happens every day. So that would be something that you might want to take, like I said, take the lid off and look at it, and then flush the toilet, and then see what happens with that flapper. And if that rubber flap doesn't close, that might be the problem. And so Mike says that he shakes the handle to make it stop. So that's basically what Mike's doing, is with him shaking the handle, he's loosening up the chain usually that's caught that flap, and that will make it flap too. Yeah, Donnie says me too. Yeah, Monica says that sounds like something she'll call her dad to fix. Yeah, that's usually what I have to do. I go down there and I get my hands dirty. And so, but that's one thing that you want to check, Donnie. You want to, if it's continually running, you want to basically open up the back of the toilet and look inside. Oh, one other thing too, Donnie, and I don't want to go off too crazy again, but there is a little like buoyancy ball, for lack of a better word. And so that as the water fills up in that tank, the ball starts to float and go higher and higher and higher. And once it hits a certain mark, it shuts the water off. And so that actually, we have hard water where we live. And so with the hard water collects on that ball and doesn't always like close. So you might want to check some of the parts back there and do a little research on how the toilet actually works. But those are some great questions, because yeah, though if your toilet's running and you're having problems like that, more than likely it has something to do with the toilet itself and not that it's clogged. But those are
Hey, Todd, this is Robin from the background. Alexander has his hand up. So okay. Alexander, I'm going to give you permission to talk. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi.
Hey, bud. How are you doing?
I accidentally pushed the button.
Oh, Alexander, are you still there?
I accidentally pushed the button. I didn't have a question.
Okay. Well, hey, Alexander, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. And if you have any questions, like just ask away. These are some great questions, guys. But with Donnie, with your questions, it's more than likely something to do with the back of the toilet. Great. Okay, so I'm going to show you some videos and bear with me. So we are going to go into my bathroom and I'm going to show you some videos on the proper technique to plunge a toilet. Looks like Teresa says, please explain hard water. Yes. So that basically means that there's a lot of minerals. So where we live, there's a lot of minerals and those minerals collect on the sink and inside the mechanisms of the toilet. So sometimes they have to get in there and break up the hard water deposits because that will prevent the little buoyancy ball from working properly. But that's a great question. Okay, guys, here we are in my bathroom. Okay, so we've got a problem. One of our children has clogged up the toilet. So as you can see in the toilet, we're using green food coloring to distinguish the water color. So before you start anything, you want to lift up the seat because you don't want any of that dirty water to get on the seat. Usually a plunger will come with a brush and the plunger. You can get it in any store. I would definitely recommend getting a brush just because it helps kind of clean the toilet throughout uses that you are using the toilet with. But here's the plunger itself. Here's the handle that we talked about earlier. Here's the cup and here's the flange. So this is what creates the suction. So you want to put the plunger in the toilet, but sometimes there's not going to be enough water. So I always bring a little extra water to add into the toilet bowl. So see how I'm adding more water to the toilet so that I can get enough suction. Super simple. You just get a firm grip. You make sure that the flange is in the bottom of the toilet. So you get a nice suction and you just create a suction. And as you can see, the water is already being sucked down. So you want to do it at least 15 or 20 times and get a nice suction. And then you'll see as it's working, it's already sucking the water down in and is basically unclogged the toilet. Okay, so I put the plunger in the toilet. Now I mentioned creating suction earlier. So the flange of the plunger is now in the base of the toilet. And so I'm going to grab the handle and I'm going to create suction by pushing down and pulling up while keeping the plunger in place. And as you can see, as I'm doing it, you'll watch the water disappear. And as you can see, I'm creating suction, which is pulling and pulling, pushing and pulling the water in and out of the base of the toilet, creating that suction that I want to clear out the base of the toilet. Okay, so as you can see in the videos, it's important that you get the flange into the drain and the cup is going to sit over the top. So that's when it's going to cause the suction. So it might not even take as many up and down pushes and pulls. It might just start clearing itself out. But as you can see, if there's too much water in there, that could create a problem. And so if there's not enough water, you want to add a little bit in. If there's too much water, you want to take some of it out. Okay, so we mentioned earlier, there are different types of plungers, and I'm going to show you another video. And this is in a different area. It's not in another toilet. This is a different type of plunger where you can use it in a different area of the home. Okay, guys, so I'm standing in my tub. And now, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually use a plunger in the tub and for your shower. So I've taken a shower, and obviously, as you can see, all the hair has fallen off my head. It is now clogged my drain. So this one is slightly different than the one we used in the toilet. It has an accordion style to it. It's got the cup and the flange with the handle. So I'm going to place it over the drain, and I'm going to make sure that there's a solid seal to it. And I'm just going to do like I did with the toilet, is I'm going to create suction by pushing down and pulling up, pushing down and pulling up, and you will slowly start to see the water start to go down the drain. So as I mentioned earlier, you can use a plunger in a sink, you can use it in a toilet, or you can use it in a tub. Okay, guys. So has anybody used one in a shower? Because that was something that I never really used until there were women in my house. And so I don't have any hair. So we actually use a special drain cover. That's like a little mesh net that collects all the hair. But we do have a lot of hair in our shower drains. And so has anybody used one other than in a toilet? Monica says her dad has used it because of all the hair from her sisters. Yeah, that's basically my wife and our girls. Nadia says she uses a mesh cover. Those are great. It's almost like a wire screen that you put in the drain, and it collects everything. So as you're using a shower, you can pull it out and get the hair out. And I even use it actually when I am showering in the middle of the shower, because I'm in there. I figure, you know what, let me get the rest of the stuff out. And so you can even use it when there's not a clog. It's just kind of a useful tool to use to kind of get it going. Nadia says that dad uses it in the sink. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, that you can use it in a toilet, you can use it in the sink, you can use something small like that, like the one I used in the shower. You can use that in a kitchen sink. You can use it in a bathroom sink. You can use it in the shower. Now here I have the steps. There are 3 steps. So in the first step, I have lifting the toilet. Can anybody remember why we want to lift that toilet seat? Hey, thanks, Donnie. This is better than YouTube. Thanks. Anybody tell me why we want to lift that toilet seat before we go to work? So the seat doesn't get dirty. Absolutely. Nadia says, so the seat doesn't get dirty. I have done that before. Even when I use the toilet brush, sometimes I forget to do that. And as I'm taking the toilet brush off, I'm like, oh man, all that dirty water is all over the seat. Monica says her mom will be so mad if we don't lift up the seat. Well, so that Monica's statement about not lifting up the seat is for her brother, probably. I find that with our son that he doesn't aim properly. So we always remind him to lift up the seat. And so step 2 is we're getting the plunger in place and we're getting that nice tight seal. So you want to make sure the flange is in the drain and the cup is covering the drain as well, and there's enough water. And then step 3, we have the you use your method of pushing and pulling vertically. So vertically is up and down, and you want to get that nice tight seal. And as you're pushing and pulling, the water will start to drain out of the toilet. Great job, guys. So here's a little did you know facts about plungers. So as we mentioned earlier, you can use a plunger for unclogging sinks, tubs, and showers. Now this next one, here's a little question for you guys. Why would you not want to use a plunger if you've used like a drain cleaner chemical first? So sometimes I will use a drain cleaner in the shower and I'll dump this cleaner in there. Why would I not want to use a plunger right away if the drain isn't clearing? Why do you think that I might not want to use chemicals and a plunger? Monica says, because maybe the plunger will clear out the chemicals. Nadia says, because it will clear it out by itself. Mike says those chemicals are bad. Yes, those are all great answers. Pollution, so the plunger doesn't get stuck down the drain. The main reason why you don't want to use chemicals such as a drain cleaner and a plunger is because if you're using a plunger, sometimes the water will splash back. And those chemicals are extremely toxic, and sometimes they will burn your skin. So if you decide to use a drain cleaner first, let the drain cleaner do its job. What I would recommend is that you use hot water to wash down the drain cleaner. That helps break up like the hair or whatever's clogging up the drain. And then let that do it first, because if you go right in and use the plunger right after the drain cleaner, sometimes that drain cleaner will splash up and burn your skin. And that's something that you want to avoid, because those chemicals are very harsh and they're very corrosive, which means that they eat away at things and it could burn your skin. So those are some great answers. And here's a little tidbit. It was invented back in 1874 in New York, and it was referred to as the vent clearer, or marketed as the force cup. And so other names for the plungers include, like we said, force cup, plunger's friend, or the plumber's helper. So those are some interesting facts about a plunger that I bet you guys didn't know. Okay, so the next thing we're going to discuss, Donnie says that was before my time. In 1993, Donnie, oh man, you make me feel so old. I was born in 1972, so that was closer to my time. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about are circuit panels or circuit breakers. Has anybody first heard of a circuit breaker or a breaker box? Donnie says, yep. What do you think? What is it, Donnie? Can you help us out? If you've heard of it. Monica says she's heard of it, but doesn't know what it is. Mike says yes, but I don't touch it. Donnie says to reset the Wi-Fi. And Nadi says I've heard of a circuit breaker. Yep. Alexander says not sure. Okay, so let's talk about a breaker box. So it's the main distribution point for electrical circuits in your home. That's kind of a big statement, a main distribution point. So the way I like to think of it as is your breaker box is a metal box where all your electrical connections are coming together. And now this breaker box decides where I'm going to send all these electrical currents throughout the house. So that's kind of like what I would call a main electrical hub, kind of like your main electrical station, let's call it. And so your electricity comes from outside the home and goes to this electrical box, and then it sends the electricity out to all the parts of your home. So the circuit breaker is actually a part of the circuit breaker box. So it's just basically like a switch. So here it says if there's too much current flowing, which is your electricity, if there's too much electricity flowing, I can't talk. That breaker switch kind of cuts it off and says, okay, that's enough. And it's more of a safety, thing. So you guys can read through that. I'm going to go through because I have a couple videos that I really want to show you guys. So here's a picture. On the right is a picture of the breaker box itself. We have, and these people have labeled their breaker box. And so on the left, we have range hood, which would be your stove. We have lights, receptacles. These people are lucky and they have a pool. There's oven. And so they labeled theirs. So for those of you, I would definitely recommend using Braille labels. This way you can help out around the house. You could put, say, for a bedroom, you can label it B1 or B2, knowing it's the bedroom, or a K for a kitchen. That way, if the lights go out in the kitchen or a major appliance stops working, you know when you go out there. Oh, Donnie says he can't read Braille. I'm sorry, Donnie. Well, just a suggestion. If you have labels that are nice and bold like these here, you can use those. If you like to use large print labels, yeah, Monica says she uses large print. There's just different suggestions to help you guys out. You can even use color coding. And so on the picture on the left here is actually the circuit breaker itself. And you can have the on and off switch. So on the left, there's off, and on the right, there's on. So these two breaker switches are in the on position, and there is 20 on each one of those little breakers. The 20 is referring to how many amps are in each breaker. So if the current or flow of electricity is greater than 20 amps, those switches will turn off to protect your electrical devices. Okay, so how did we know that the circuit breaker is tripped? What would happen? You guys tell me, what would happen in the house that would say to you, huh, something's wrong? Maybe maybe a circuit breaker is tripped. Monica asks if the circuits are big or small. She can't tell from the picture. So let me go back. So the circuit breakers themselves are smaller, and the picture on the right is the breaker box, and the circuit breakers, the picture on the left is a more detailed picture of what they look like. But they are, I can't even describe it, maybe an inch long. They're relatively big. When you get out and find your breaker box, you go in there and you could definitely tell each individual ones. So Mike says when the TV goes out. Yeah, so inside the house, if a major appliance like the TV or lights in a room, they stop working, that's a good indication that a breaker has tripped. So now we go out into the breaker box, or whether it's either in your basement or outside, the circuit breakers will have like an orange or red marker indicating that it's been tripped. Now, when we're talking about tripped, do you think we're talking about that they've fallen, or what do you think tripped means? And Donnie says, what's tripped? Anybody help Donnie and I out? Do you think the breaker has fallen? What do you think tripped means? Nadia said it's shut off. Exactly. So that's just another word of saying that it's been shut off. So when we're referring to tripped, it's indicating that it's gone from the on position to the off position. So that's what trip means. Thanks, Nadia. And Mike says that's why they're called circuit breakers, because yeah, it's breaking the current to the appliance. So here are some important things that we need to know. We just want to make sure, first of all, that it's not just a bulb that's blown, because sometimes light bulbs go out. It could just be that you just need to replace the light bulb. But a good indication that a breaker has tripped would be that a whole room has completely gone dark, or you're blow drying your hair, you've got the radio going, somebody's running the microwave, and all of a sudden all the lights go out. That's a pretty good indication. Like the next point for major appliances, before you go out and fix that breaker box, you want to like turn the hair dryer off, unplug that. You just want to make sure that when you go out there and you then turn it back on, that it's just not going to trip again, because you've got everything running like it was before. So yeah, a good indication is more than one thing has gone out. Okay, so here's a little did you know. So the circuit breakers come in different types, and this I'll try to keep you awake as I'm discussing this. They come in single pole and double pole. And so the picture that I had a couple slides ago were single pole, and it's just one tiny little switch. I have a video where I actually do a double pole. So it's just basically two switches put together. They come in 120 volts and 240 volts. And that's just the electricity talk. Some of the 240 volt ones are more, are bigger appliances like an air conditioner, a water heater, stuff like that. And then as we discussed earlier, a trip, we're not talking about a vacation or falling over. If you try to plug in too many things, there'll be a short. And in order to protect your appliances, your circuit breaker will trip. And that way you go out there and you have to reset them. But this protects you, the home, and your appliances. Okay, so here's our video. And then we'll go through and we'll watch these together. Hi, guys. So I'm outside at my breaker box. It is a big gray box. This one happens to be a long rectangle. So as you can see, I'm not sure if you guys can see this or not, but I have this big main. So that's the main switch. And ours happens to be outside. Some of you guys might find yours in a closet or in the basement. You'll sometimes find your breaker box inside in a closet or in a basement. We have labeled ours. We've used a pencil, so it might be kind of hard to see, but I would definitely recommend you guys use Braille labels and label it, say B1 for bedroom 1 or B2. But we have here, this is the main breaker to the house. And then we have stove, we have dryer. Some of them, as we saw on the slide. So as I said earlier, if Braille labels don't work for you, I definitely recommend color coding it or large print like that main label. You want something that will help you distinguish which is for which. And my fingers, so that what my finger's on right now, that's a double pole. And down below where this little icon is, those are the single ones. So these are little single switches. These are the doubles. Are double pull, some are single pull, the smaller ones up here. And as I'm shaking this, this is the actual breaker circuit. And this whole gray panel is actually the breaker box. So our stove is tripped. So we have on the right side, off on the left side. If we move down, we could see that our stove has tripped. And it's very small, but I'm not sure if you can see that, but it says that it's off. So that will tell me as I go down the box, oh, my stove is off. So what I would do is just flip it over to the right side. And now it's in the on position. And you can either run inside and turn on the stove, or you can have somebody inside helping you and letting you know whether it's come on. Some breaker boxes, as was mentioned in the slide, have an orange color or a red color that will tell you whether it's tripped or not. But you can customize the breaker box to whatever the way you want it. But I would recommend maybe rail labels or bright labels like this main one here. So Monica says that, yes, she gets it now. So the two circuits together, those are the double pole, and then the single ones are the single pole. And you'll be able to tell if you run your finger, when you go out to the breaker box and you run your finger along, you'll be able to tell which one is to the left, because that's the off position. And you'll be able to notice just by touching it, oh, this is on the left, it must be off. And then you'll hear a distinct clicking noise, which we'll discuss in the next video. Okay, I just wanted to focus on one more thing before we go back in. As you can see, our dryer's tripped. The breaker switch is to the left in the off position. I want you to focus on the sound that you hear when I'm flipping it to the right to turn it on. You can hear that loud click, letting me know that I've done something and that I've turned it to the on position. Okay, we're going to go on to our next thing. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. You guys are doing great, and I love the questions. Okay, Teresa has a question here. When a circuit breaker trips, it stops the electrical current from flowing to a particular place, bedroom, or particular appliance. Exactly. That's basically what's happening. Is in order to protect like an appliance, like your hairdryer or a stove, the circuit breaker will trip in order to prevent it from what we call frying. And we're not talking about frying chicken. We're talking about burning up the electrical appliance. So you guys are great. You guys know a lot of this stuff. That's great. So what do you need to know about H2O? What's H2O? Can anybody tell me what H2O stands for? Monica says water. Yes, that's the chemical. Donnie, water. That is the chemical makeup for water. 2 hydrogen molecules and 1 oxygen molecule. Okay, so why turn off the water? So this little blip here, I thought it was really good. So we spend a lot of time on the circuit breakers and the electrical boxes, but we never really stop and think about water, because water usually is always running, right? We always have water. We turn on the faucet, the water's coming out, we flush the toilet, everything, you take a shower. So water, we really don't think about a lot. But when electricity stops working, everybody runs to the circuit breaker and everybody talks about, electricity in the circuit breaker, but we don't really give too much attention to the water. So in these next few slides, I want to discuss what happens with water, and in an emergency, like we mentioned earlier with the toilet, if your sink is acting up, it's clogged, it's leaking, your faucet's cracked, some emergencies happen, water is flowing everywhere. We need to shut this water off immediately. And so that's when we were going to pay attention to how to turn the water off. So it's not too difficult to locate the shutoff valves, but we're going to go through and I'm going to show you a few areas that we're going to work on, that under the sink and behind a toilet. So what's under a sink? So we're going to identify a few things under the sink, and we're going to look at some slides. We're going to show some pictures. So when you open up the cabinet and you pop your head underneath the sink, you're going to see a bunch of things underneath there. So we're going to identify a few of these parts. So usually there's going to be a drain, and there's going to be a pipe running from the sink. That large pipe is made out of PVC, which is a plastic, and it drops down the center and it curves and then goes back into basically behind the wall into the main line that drains out of your house. That little curve area is called the trap. So that's trapping all the hair, anything that people have been shoving down the sink drain. That is what we call a P trap because it's shaped like a printed P if you turn it to the side. So that's trapping everything. The other two pipes, which are going to be to either side of that PVC pipe, that big white PVC pipe, those are going to be your water pipes. They're going to be made out of metal or flexible lines, and those are going to be your shutoff valves that we're looking for. Can anybody tell me what side the hot and cold will be on? What side do you think? So if it's a hot water line, do you think it would be on the left side or the right side? And the cold water, left side or right side? And I'll give you a hint. It will match up with the sink up on top. And I actually gave you the clue right there. So the last line there says these lines will lead to your shutoff valves. Monica says the hot is on the left. Nadia says the hot is on the left. Exactly. So usually it's going to match up with your sink. So your hot water valve is on the left side underneath and your cold water is on the right. Okay, here's an illustrated picture of underneath the sink. This is a kitchen sink. So we have our PVC pipe. As it comes down, I'll use my little cursor. So the water comes down the pipe, curves. Here's my trap. And if you tilt it to the side and you turn it to clockwise, it's shaped like a P, like a printed P. And then it goes out behind and drains out. And then we have over here, this is our hot water valve. And that's on the left. And then on the right side of the PVC is our cold water valve. That's our shutoff valve. Now, can anybody, here's a trick question if you were here at the last lesson, could anybody tell me what our little jingle or a little memory is for either tightening something or loosening something? What's the little term that we used? You know, if anybody can remember from our last lesson, if you were with us last time, and it's a little jingle that I use all the time, and I'll start you out. It says righty, and I'll let you guys fill in the blank. If you guys remember, Nadia says righty tighty, lefty loosey. Exactly. Good job. So it's the same thing with shutting these off. So righty tighty. So righty tighty, we're tightening it and we're turning it off. So if we're turning it to the right, we're tightening the knob and we're shutting the water off. After we're done, lefty loosey. Yes, Donnie, right. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. Exactly. So when you're loosening it, you want to turn it to the left. You want to tighten it, turn it to the right. And on this sink has that object, that canister to the left with the shiny metal on top and the white on the bottom. That's actually a garbage disposal. So this sink has two sinks to it. One side, you can chew up all your food and all that stuff. And the garbage disposal helps chop up all the food and then sends it into the common drain with the drain that comes from the sink. Okay, what's behind the toilet other than some kind of gnome or troll hiding behind the toilet? So just like the kitchen sink, there will be a shutoff valve that's hiding behind your toilet. It's usually up against the wall, and most of the time it's on the left side. This would only be cold water because we don't want warm water going into our toilet. We only want the water to just flush everything out. We don't worry about whether it's a nice warm toilet and it's comfortable. We just have cold water going in, and it's usually going to be on the left side of the toilet. So if your toilet's running, go catch it. But just a joke. You need to shut off, like Donnie asked earlier, his toilet is constantly running. So in this case, he might actually have to turn the water off, or he might have to fix something in the back of the toilet. So he might have to lift the lid and find out what's going on behind the scenes of the toilet and look into the reservoir tank and find out. But this one, you clog the toilet's starting to flow up and it's starting to get higher and higher. And now we're starting to panic because we're in our friend's house or we're in somebody's house and we don't want it all over the floor. So this is where we reach behind, and I'll show you some illustrations. And you want to turn the valve, you want to tighten it up so we shut the water off completely so that we don't have any more water flowing into the toilet. So these two pictures, the picture on the left, the green arrow is pointing to the cold water valve. So it's coming out from behind the wall. So that's coming from the main water source in the house. It comes out, there's the valve, and then there's a metal pipe that leads up. So Donnie, if you could see where my cursor is, this is that reservoir tank. So when you flush the toilet, where you push this button here, some of them have a handle. The water drains out here, goes around the bowl, and then comes down into the bowl. So Donnie, your problem is probably back in here. If you could see my cursor, that's usually where you're, so you want to pick up this lid and look down, and then you have all the parts of the toilet in there. So that's, if your toilet's continually running, that's where your issue usually is going to be. So I would check there. But here's the valve. You want to shut that off. If this bowl is starting to fill up and you're like, oh man, this is getting too close, shut the water off. And then the picture on the right, that's a close-up of a valve. And this will be the same with whether it's under the sink or under the toilet. They're going to look the same. You might need a wrench because sometimes these get pretty tight, and you might need a wrench like we discussed in our last lesson about the different tools that you might need to do basic repairs. Most of them you can do by hand, but in some cases you might need a wrench. Okay, let's start this video, and don't mind me with my eyes closed here. Here we are, guys, back in our bathroom. And so now we're going to talk about turning off the water in the sink. So we've had an emergency, whether our sink is running or there's a clog, whatever the emergency is, but we need to turn off the water in the under the sink quickly. So let's look under the sink. I've cleared out all the space, and we'll talk about the parts of the sink that were mentioned in the slide. So can I just say our sink doesn't look like that. We've got hair dryers and my shaving stuff. So you're going to want to clear all that out because you want to have access, one, and then if anything happens where water's spilling, you don't want anything that's under the sink destroyed. So this black pipe is the drain that leads down to the white PVC that was also mentioned in the slide. And here's that trap. This is what's catching all the hair and gunk in the sink. We have the two water valves. I just want to talk real quick about this trap. And I know I'm running out of time, but I'm going to use my cursor. There is a knob here and a knob here. If your sink is clogged, usually in this trap is a bunch of hair or whatever's been sucked down into that drain. You can undo these two knobs and take this trap out. I would highly recommend you put a bucket underneath, but you take that trap out and you can clear all that stuff out, and you might not need a plunger or you might not need the drain cleaner. The one on the left is the hot, the one on the right is the cold. So you might have to turn both of them off in order to turn the water off. But righty-tighty, lefty-loosey are little clues that we learned in the last lesson about turning things or tightening them. So if we're going to turn the water off, we're going to turn it to the right to turn it off and to the left to loosen it. I want to get a little more in detail about the pipe and the drain underneath the sink. So let's look under. So we have the PVC, which is the plastic part of the pipe, and it's shaped like a P. So if you turn it to the side, it's like a printed letter P. I just want to discuss it a little bit more because if you can't see it, you can't really understand it too well. So if you reach underneath the sink and you're feeling around and you feel a plastic part, and then you follow your fingers along it, it's the curved part in the sink, and that is what's catching all the hair and debris that is coming down the sink. And they have these little knobs that you can twist and loosen them, and you can actually take the lower curved part off and clear out any hair that might be trapped. Okay, we'll do one more. Okay, so we mentioned turning the water off on the sink. Now we are at my toilet and we have an emergency where we need to turn the water off at the toilet. So we're looking at my toilet and our water valve is on the wall behind the toilet on the left. So if I reach down, I am now gripping the valve. Okay. So as you can see, the valve is attached to the wall. So it's not going to be actually on the toilet itself. The valve will be coming out from behind the wall. And when I say behind the toilet, it's tucked behind the toilet, but it's attached to the wall. So it's not like hidden behind the toilet itself. And then I'll use my cursor. So when I have the water on, the water is flowing up this pipe and into that reservoir tank. But when I say behind the toilet, I just wanted to remind you guys that I don't mean that it's actually behind the toilet itself. It's behind the toilet, but attached to the wall. And for me to turn the water off, I would turn it to the right to tighten. Once I've repaired the problem, I turn it to the left. So again, when you look for it, it's going to be behind the toilet on the wall, either on the right or the left. Okay. If you guys have any questions, you guys have been great. I really appreciate you joining me again. You can let APH know if you guys have any other videos that you'd like me to come back and do any presentations on. I know we just covered 3 basic repairs, but these are things that I feel are super important and that not a lot of people even know about. I mean, these are things that I just learned about recently myself, and things that we try to teach our kids, because if they're home by themselves and something like this happens, then we definitely want to be able to take care of these issues. So if you guys have any questions, please send them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I really appreciate seeing you guys coming back. It's great to see you all again and hope to see you guys soon. Thanks again. Monica asks if it's realistic for teens to do these things. Absolutely. So you might need a tool, like I mentioned, you might need a wrench to use these water valves, but for the most part, these are all realistic to do. We actually have our 7-year-old work on some of these. She actually likes to take the plunger out. I'm like, don't use the plunger. But other than that, yeah, these are easy things to do and things that I personally feel are important that you guys know, especially, later on, if you guys are going to be homeowners, these are things you're going to need to know. So thanks, guys. It's great to see you guys again.
Thank you, Todd. I think we all learned a little bit. I know that as a homeowner myself, I've had to shut the water off, and you want to know where to do that before it actually happens and you're in a crisis. So I think it's great that you were covering those topics. Same thing with electricity when it goes out. If you're in the dark, especially, what are you going to do? So. Yeah.
I actually didn't know where our breaker box was at first, and I went into the basement, but we don't really have a basement, and I had to go outside and find it. So that's one thing that you guys want to check, is just maybe go through with your parents or go out yourself and say, hey, where are these things? And thanks, Nani. I appreciate you. It's good to see you back again, bud. And thanks for inviting me back, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think everyone should look. It's a good question if you don't know, to ask your parents where the breaker box might be, especially if a lot of us are working from home now, even if we're students, and if your parents happen to not be there. I have 2 circuit boxes in my house. It just happens to be that way. I don't have a basement. I'm in Florida, so one's in the garage, and I have one behind a picture in my living room. So I don't know how they planned that out, but it's good to know where they are when things go wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you, Todd. I wanted to mention to everyone today that tomorrow's Virtual Excel Academy is going to be about where can we make flowers go. And Leanne will be back tomorrow afternoon with us, same time, same channel. And want to thank everyone again for a successful meeting, and we'll see everyone soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.